But here's what I'm really here to talk about today, which is this open government data stuff. And I'm not going to go through it a lot, except to say that I'm going to keep walking over here and wanting to pick it up. That would be a bad idea. Governments around the world are starting to share data openly. And I think that's a really neat thing, something we want to, for the same reason you want to share code, for the same reason you want to create innovation economies, as well as for the public good of creating transparency in the world, government transparency, things like that. There's a lot of neat stuff happening. I tweet about it a lot and I blog about it, so there's where I am. But we've been over in the Tetherless World Constellation. We've had a graduate program going, which I now want to move down to the undergraduate level for a lot of reasons. One of them is that a lot of this stuff is moving to an open model. And I'll show you two examples of specific things I'm looking for people on later today. But so my graduate group, as of last summer, so starting about 2009, we started working with the US government, which was creating a website called DataGov. I'll talk a little bit more about later. But since then, so they released that in 2009, May, with 57 data sets. So what this is all about is releasing data, not through an API and not publishing a report and not a PDF, but actually making the raw data available for us to do stuff with. As of last summer, my group had found 1,022,000 of these things from around the world. This is 43 countries, I forget how many, 192 organizations, catalogs, things like that, 12 languages, I think it is, 24 languages. So there's a lot of obvious, interesting challenges here, right? If you want to learn about health around the world, there's a lot of health data sets out here. But like, for example, if you go to the Norwegian data, they have this nasty habit of actually talking Norwegian, right? Or the Bahraini, I can show you what our search engine will find you from the Bahraini data sets. I just don't know what it means because they're all in Arab characters that I don't read. But so some of our challenges are, if we want to internationalize this stuff, how do we bring it into the same kind of situation which open software lives in, where we can create these central hubs where people can communicate together and work together. So we're very interested in sort of looking at what's needed. These are some pretty pictures, but those are the countries we have data from, everything green. Now, a lot of these other ones actually have data sharing sites that either we haven't found yet because of the language issues. So I know Estonia and a few of the other ones down in this area had some, things like that. So one of the things we're interested in is learning more about it. Another one is, knowing more about what is being, what are they about? Yeah. So these are, so categorizing this stuff is hard, because we got millions of them in lots of different languages. This just, if we graph them in the raw, we see things like oceans and estuaries, facilities and structures, but some of them say, so this is transportation networks and inland water resources. And this one's transportation, up there somewhere is inland water resources. So again, this isn't organized, right? This is just, we're scraping stuff from the web. So we're very interested in projects that do interesting stuff with this. And it goes on and on. So a lot of what the group does, we built a lot of infrastructure using semantic web technologies that let us actually build demos like this. So I would run the demo, but in the interest of time, I don't want to do it. But this is taking US aid and British aid to different countries around the world, and we can actually compare how much of each kind and things like that. So this is a demo. This was built by one of your classmates last year, undergraduate. It took him about a week using our stuff. Those of you who've taken my web science class or are going to taking my web science class now know that the last project, we just grabbed some of these things and build this kind of demo. So this isn't rocket science anymore. It's something that's really practicable. We know how to do. The question is, what could we do with it? Right? What's useful? How do we build it? And one of the things that's nice is because a lot of this is growing out of an open data movement, it's coupling nicely with the open software kind of movements. It's also a place where RPI has now had a lot of visibility, so it's a great way for you to get involved in some stuff that really has potential. So this is the US data.gov data sharing site. You can see down here is this one called Semantic Web. If I do that, you can see that it mentions RPI here. We've shown up in the White House blog a couple times with demos we've done and stuff, so if you want to be able to go home and say, hey mom, I did something pretty cool in my RCOS project, this stuff can get noticed. We've spun off, some companies have spun off of this, things like that, not out of our lab, and part of the reason has been very much that we're trying to push much more the openness, sharing, things like that. Now, what's been a really great thing in the past year, and we were this wasn't our initiative, but we were involved in helping make it happen, is that, so this is the political wing of this thing. So the Obama administration came out to the world and said, we think sharing data is a good thing. We think transparency, making it possible for your citizens to know what government does is a good thing. And they created this thing called the Open Government Partnership, which I forget how many countries are involved now. But it's for countries around the world. They've made commitments, they commit to releasing data, things like that. And some of us were pushing them to get involved at the software end. So as of last year, they released a first beta. There's a second beta just coming out soon, and the first real release coming out of an open source platform called the Open Government Platform, which is aimed at promoting transparency and citizen engagement around the world. And I'm not going to go into a lot of details about it, except to say, if you think getting the US government permission to release all this stuff on GitHub was easy, the answer is no, but they've done it. It's a joint project by the US and India. You can see some of the things up here. You probably can't from where you're sitting, but this says Canada to launch an open data portal in 2013. Ghana to have one by the end of 2013. There's a few others. I know Mexico is involved now, things like that. So this is actually a place where not only are they interested in open source stuff, but the open source stuff can have really big impact. Now, we've been working with some folks, including New York State, the cities of Albany, Troy, and Schenectady, to try to get them interested in some of this. And obviously to do that, we're going to need to do some projects that get them excited. So we're kind of interested, we think the government is, so the State Department is going out to other countries and saying, you should start a data sharing site and here's the software, right? And now people from around the world are starting to contribute back to that software, although still very slowly. We'd like to get more activity going there, so that's project one. Project two is, I'd like to see this move to state governments and city governments. There are more cities around the world than there are countries, obviously. And I think that we're going to have tens of millions of these data sets out by 2015, and God knows how many by 2020 as this catches on. It's also something where, right now, not surprisingly, we're seeing it primarily in the open and democratic societies, but they're starting to put pressure, therefore, on some of the other countries. So if you remember my world map, some of the places where there were a lot of blanks were around some of the countries in the Middle East where the Arab Spring has been going on, things like that. So one of our interests is to get some stuff going there. Okay. Let's see if this works. It's supposed to be a video. So another project. So that's getting governments to share data. So the first set of projects are around the Open Government Platform. I'd like RPI to have a fork of that hub where some neat stuff happens. And so anyone who's interested in sort of government data, playing with the government, that kind of stuff, I think we have a real opportunity. I have the lab director of the Tetherless World Constellation down at the Winslow Building actually runs our data gov site, so we actually have a structure by which we can do some of this project. We actually have a lot going on. But right now, it's very open. We have finished one set of projects, which I did primarily as a graduate research thing, and I want to now move it to a real open source thing. So people who are interested in open source and government, things like that, looking for projects, here's something. And I really hope this will be a multi-year thing, so it'll start now, but keep going, so you can pick a project you're interested in now, or do it longer term. Now, if you think getting governments to go share things openly and learn about community and stuff like that is hard, it is. is, but here's one that's even harder. This is Microsoft. Getting Microsoft to share things in the open. Sorry? Yeah, I've tried to both on and off. I'll just start it and then I'll jump to where you'll see where we're connected. So F-sharp.
F-sharp is an easy on-ramp to learn F-sharp in the browser. It lowers the barrier to entry to F-sharp.
That's everything. We don't need to listen to her for a minute. So F-sharp is a functional language that was developed by Microsoft, and it gives you access to the things on your desktop anything that has a sharp at the end, as supported by Microsoft does. But they weren't so happy that it wasn't getting used very much because, after all, not that many people really are into functional programming. But what they decided to do was to build a simpler version of it, launchable through the browser, and create a community above it. So after many, many years of, how do I want to say this carefully? Don't quote me on tape. But after worrying about Microsoft's opinions about openness and community and ownership, to really see them feeling that a good way to bring a lot of stuff out was to embrace an open source kind of approach, made me very happy. And then they asked us to get involved in it. So it's a very easy to learn.
Software lies at the heart of our connected.
It's a very easy to learn programming language. It's been used for a lot of things. And what they're very interested in,
real-world examples, and see how they're applied.
And you see how we have developed programs.
Again, you can just go online to try F-sharp and you'll find it.
Data rather than documents. F-sharp is a functional language.
Environment.
So they're interested in us helping them to move some of this into the open government thing, but even more interestingly into some of the big data stuff we do here. So one of the things that's really nice about this particular functional language is it has some very nice data accessors. So you can take a data set, you can express some accessor functions, and then you can use them. And the problem is it doesn't play nice with the same technologies I've been talking about that have been really good for the open government stuff, but it plays great with the technologies that talks to, we don't need to hear him. I'm just showing you how good our RPI looks. But anyway, but what they're very interested in doing is twofold things. One is actually expanding this to more kind of web stuff. So they have whole libraries of things you can do with F-sharp. It's really easy to get involved. And you can publish back to libraries and share, which is why I'm willing to get my name associated with this of all the Microsoft products, because it's something where, it could be a leading edge to Microsoft to discover that if this is starting to get used a lot. In fact, I'm going to have to leave here before the end of your meeting today because I'm supposed to go talk to some reporter who wants to know about how this is being used in education. I'm going to tell them, I just pitched it to a whole bunch of students. I hope some of you will want to do it. But again, so we have a tremendous amount of opportunities. I was actually near the end of this.
What's the next
Yeah, I'm not. But on try F-sharp. So one of the things that's nice about it is you can see down here on the bottom, software, open source. They're playing with Stack Overflow. I mean, these things are very, very countercultural to Microsoft research. And so, again, I think this is a project that's kind of cool, gets you into a loop where you're talking to a big company, for those of you who may be looking for jobs someday. They're not a bad company to have played with. But more interestingly to me, it may be taking that company out towards the open web, to openness, to the stuff that you guys have been learning about in your years as RCOS students. I know some of you I see have been here for a while. so that's what I had to say. I'll take questions, or if anyone's interested, or things like that. Yeah.
Is there any platform that currently exists for sharing large data sets? Like you're saying that you want to do what we did with open source to make data accessible, because there's a lot of, market research companies that have proprietary data and they sell it. I guess there's some places where you can buy and sell data, but
right. So this is the DataGov site.
Say I collected a huge data set. I want to share it with people.
Right. So the answer is right now there are people discussing it. There's a bunch of different sort of cataloging sites for that stuff, but they tend to be focused on different things. So it may be some group of scientists who are sharing science data. So I'm actually trying to find some of that. What I've been actually working on, I took the slides out, is so there's been a lot of work on how do we embed within web pages descriptors that can tell search engines and other programs more about the information. Because if you want to build a computer thing that can help you do some of this stuff, right? Instead of having to go to a search hub, which contains the data, you can sort of move the metadata to this hub and then have the data or documents live out there. So based on the semantic web approach that I and others have done, something called schema.org exists. It's not an open thing, although it actually has a part that's playing in the open. But schema.org is the search engines adopt some things. I know it sounds like I'm not answering your question.
No,
I really am. Because what we've been working very hard on is working with Mike, and not would, we were told it would be accepted by January 22nd, but we haven't heard yet, is we've proposed this data set schema. We've got governments around the world to say to Google and Microsoft and Yahoo jointly do this thing, that they will, if this gets approved, they will embed it in all these data set descriptors. So that makes Google excited because now there'll be millions of these things. Then what we're hoping is to go, then the way I would try to answer your question is saying, rather than putting it into a central hub, what you'd be doing is publishing the metadata, which would be going into these meta catalogs. But when somebody clicked on it, it would come back to your data. So it wouldn't be about moving the data. It would be about describing the data and get it out. Microsoft has something called OData, which is sort of a corporate thing they were trying to do with I think they're now about to move that. They've moved that out to a community W3C, World Wide Web Consortium project. So again, there's stuff happening that people are beginning to realize that this data wants to be shared, that there's a lot of it out there, but I don't think there's, sort of the GitHub of data or something like that.
Yeah, because I realized there was going to,
government that's happening, but in these other things, there's a lot of them. But there's a bunch of people who'd like to be that. So I can point you at 3 or 4 different. The exciting thing is there's a lot going on in that space. The bad news is you're going to have to wait another couple years till that's there, unless one of you guys wants to help create it, in which case you don't have to wait a couple years. You can be the one who does it. And we actually have pretty good visibility in that space to try to bring stuff to campus if somebody's interested in that kind of thing. So that would be the kind of project I'd love to see happen. Again, we would probably launch it from the government stuff, because that's completely open. There's no ownership issues. Governments won't release this stuff until the privacy issues are worked out. Everything on our site is being released Creative Commons 0 licenses. Some of the governments are doing the equivalent of Creative Commons attribute, but these are all, they want you to take this. They want you. They're very happy when companies monetize it, when people do open apps that help people. So it's really kind of a neat space to play in.
Last question. Oh, yes, sorry. Is there big data licenses specifically or not? Is it just?
I don't know of any, but I'm sure people are talking about it. Fran Berman, who's our former VPR, now has a center here at RPI, and she's meeting with something called the Research Data Alliance, which is part of the Something Data Union, to try to start creating these kind of standards and things like that to do some of that. But I'd say the answer is we're just at the beginning of a lot of it.
I know you've talked to the mayor of Schenectady about a couple things. One thing he mentioned was, and something I'd probably be interested in pursuing over the summer, is linking together city data regarding police reports and housing violations. Like, an example he gave was, if you have a landlord in Troy who is not keeping his houses up to code, the codes might not necessarily transfer between cities, and you need to describe them in a certain way. And that way, if he's also a landlord in Schenectady, you could find out that you could close him down there too.
Yep. So we actually have so this folks over at SUNY Albany have a center called the Center for Technology and Government, and they've been bringing the mayor of. They've brought together the mayors and some of the high-level people from. So it turns out to do things with governments is a pain in the butt because we don't. That's not the technical term. The technical term is very politically fraught. And there's a lot of different issues. I mean, you know, we were trying to work with Schenectady on doing some open data stuff, but they had a different issue they had to deal with first. Because when you go for what they call their code enforcement database, so that's, you know, which of the houses in Schenectady have problems and have had to be shut down, things like that. They said, here, let me show you the box of paper under this guy's desk. This is the 2011 March records kind of thing. I mean, exaggerate only a little. I mean, so they don't even have a lot of this stuff digitized. So what we're trying to do is convince them that there'd be a lot of power in working together, doing the digitization and getting the open data part as a side benefit. And by the way, we want to build that out of OGPL, and one of the projects I hope some of you may be interested in, and you've already said. Yeah, now, summer, into the next term. I mean, we definitely have a lot of potential for some long-term stuff in this, and it's a big thing. Probably I should take one more question, and then you have other. Anything else?
Yeah. If any of you wants to work in this project, please send me an email. Send an email to Professor
To me or whoever.
Yeah.
But I think we have a lot going on. Now, I got to make one other announcement, but I can't actually make the announcement because the crazy way this campus works. So anyone who would like a nice free t-shirt and to learn something really cool going on campus should come to MPAC Studio 1 tomorrow at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. There will be a big announcement that those of you who are sort of software and technology geeks will really get off on. And the news will break tomorrow morning, and I'm not allowed to tell anyone because they're living in fear that somebody will put it on the campus Reddit, and that'll be where it gets to be. However, after, sort of by midday tomorrow, you'll see it. But a large company is doing something very cool, and we're involved, and you'll get free t-shirts. So come to MPAC tomorrow, 1 o'clock, Studio 1, 5th floor. I would have done a lot of stuff when I was in college for a free t-shirt. One more day you don't have to do your laundry, so.